while I cannot calm you down, you're wasting my time.
All right, we're going to talk about drinking and drugging.
And this is take two for you. You wonder, are these things really transparent? As you're going to listen today, it was totally transparent, because the reason we're doing this intro is what happens when you have been drinking and drugging and you use a very cheap SD card.
That's what happened. I got a cheap SD card, and it recorded audio, but it did not record the video. So what you're going to be seeing here shortly is not us, and you may be grateful for that, but you'll still have the audio, which I think is really the important part.
And to be honest with you, neither one of us drink anymore, so we're going to be taking you down memory lane, and we hope there's some great lessons for you in the process, because we sure enjoyed what you're about to listen to.
It's good stuff. It really is, and it's good. So I'm glad that we still have the audio, because it would have been tough to recreate. I mean, we could come up with some other stories, but it's good stuff.
That's the next one.
All right. All right, we enjoy. All right, we're going to talk about drinking and drugging.
Okay, so the only question is who's going to be listening. But
I think a lot of people are going to be listening, and I think this is really important stuff.
Well, let me tell you what I remember how we got into this, because we said, let's do this week. And that was guy who works for you is in a group with me, and he was sharing with the other men how proud he was of one of your employees who he's been working on trying to develop in. And this is a future leader that we know. We won't mention names. But he basically was saying he came up to him, and he had a bad look on his face. And Chris said, well, what's going on here? Because he was concerned about him. And he said, no, it's all good. I made a decision finally that I need to clean up my act if I'm going to move forward and quit drinking. And as a result of that, he's in that first week. And of course, that triggered me and you into our past, because everyone I know that's a leader at some point has had to go through that struggle. In terms of drinking, drugs, whatever it is, we all get that temptation, given the, especially when we live in the land of Mardi Gras.
Well, for anybody that doesn't know, let's introduce ourselves real quick. I'm Chris Francis.
I'm Rick Miller.
All right. So, there's a whole lot here, and I think that, and I was looking, you told me the other day that you'd quit 35 years ago.
Yeah. 38 to be exact.
38. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. So I looked, and it was a pretty good ways for me too. But let's get into that, and I guess just a little bit of backstory from both of us, and then kind of what happened since,
and the benefits that I've seen.
And I don't have notes here. We'll just wing it.
We're rolling.
There's plenty of substance here.
We're going to find out how much grace our wives are going to give us.
They might not watch. They might not listen.
My background grew up in Mobile. And if anyone that doesn't know, Mobile is actually the home of Mardi Gras. New Orleans kind of swamp boated it, but it's where it started. So it was a culture that lived around Mardi Gras partying and drinking. And so my earliest days, we were always in a culture where as soon as you could get somebody's ID or license, you wanted to experiment with trying to drink beer. And of course, it graduates to, let's see if we can get to somebody's dad's liquor cabinet and see if they won't notice that we snuck out a little early times or all that. So I grew up in a drinking culture, and I'm also of the age where the drug culture was being introduced in the 60s, and I was about that time going through high school into college. And so I was never somebody that didn't drink, because to me, drinking was part of being with the in crowd. Now, luckily, I did well enough in school to where I kept drinking and, moved to California, so I was introduced to some drugs as well. And all that did for me was I realized that I would do it, but because of my personality being a type A, I'd wake up with hangovers and just really waste a weekend, let's say if you went out on a Friday night. And I finally got to the point after about 10 years of, I got some DUIs, and so I should have had the warning signs, but because of the cultural pull that's how you fit in, I kept going. And I made it worse. I worked for a restaurant chain, where, I had a free card to go into a bar and a restaurant, and the company paid for it. So I put myself in bad decisions, but one day I woke up and said, this is not who I want to be. And I was disciplined enough to where I could quit drinking and go run a marathon. But when I wasn't drinking, I kept thinking about it. And I finally said, this is not getting me any further. And I literally, God gave me a thought to say, rather than saying I can't drink, I basically said, I choose to be healthy. Because I was doing all the healthy things, but I was, burning the candle at both ends. Once I did that, I lost the desire. And what you and I were talking about is, here's the beauty of what we're talking about for leadership. I know for the last 38 years, Chris, I've been waking up into reality. Whatever I wake up into, it's not a altered reality because I'm still trying to get the alcohol out of or drugs out of my system. It is what it is, and that allows me to deal with things in a real way.
Yeah. Well, so I've got a similar story. It was in our culture, it was in our family, our friends. It wasn't, taboo. It was just, everybody
still isn't.
You're right. Yeah, it was very normal to drink. I mean, I remember, I don't even know how old I was, probably too young to remember, probably 5 or 6 or 7 years old, and going to races with my dad, and he'd get 5 or 6 beers, and he'd turn around to drink one, and they were all gone because me and my brother drank them all. And, I think started drinking at a very, very early age,
which again is part of where we live.
I think so. And it was very normal. Mm-hmm. It was very normal, and there wasn't. I would say in my earlier years there weren't really a lot of drugs. Now I remember there were some drugs being passed around, and I had some friends that were smoking weed and things, and I wasn't interested.
Right.
I was just like, no, I'm not really interested in that. Later on, I did wind up experimenting, and I'm a little bit torn on what to say about that because we were driving down the road yesterday, and we passed a little clinic, they have the AA meetings, and so we were talking with my kids, and so anyway, we were talking about that they were alcoholics. And they said, well, no, they're not alcoholics. They used to be alcoholics. And I said, no, they're still alcoholics. And they were like kind of looking at me like, well, I think they even said something to the effect of, no, that's the opposite of what they're trying to do there. They're trying to, get over, that and not. And I said, I understand. But what happens is in alcoholism, and the same with drug use, is that, once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. Even though you hadn't drank for 38 years,
right?
You still consider yourself an alcoholic,
right? I'm in recovery.
In recovery, right, right. Doesn't mean that you're drinking every day, right. And so I was bringing that up to them, and the same with drugs. I said once somebody is a drug user, even though they're off drugs, they're still considered an addict. And so my little girl says, "Daddy, do you ever use drugs?" And I didn't think about it much. I said, "Yeah." And she was like, "You did?" Yeah. And I'm like, "Oh, what have I gotten myself into?" And so, on the one hand, I don't want my kids to know that I ever did any drugs, right, because I don't want them thinking that it's okay. But on the other hand, like, I don't want to lie to them. And so, but I didn't go into details of what it was and how often and anything else. But I think probably the most important message is, one is that, like, it can really screw your life up. But the other is that if you have done things, it's not over. Your life's not over. You can still come back, and you can make that decision, and you can come out on the other end smelling like a rose.
Well, all of us love the story of every great story is all about a hero gets into a dilemma, and somehow either through a guide or somebody helps them out, and they overcome the challenge. If you go to a movie with no challenge, then you're going to get bored if it's just a documentary. When we hear motivational speakers, they never come in and say, I was born bright, I worked hard, everything worked out, you can too. No, there's somewhere in there, they're going to say, I had this, but this is what happened to me. I got knocked down, and that's what draws you in. The point being is we all have them, and if you recognize that, then you're able to say, okay, I made some mistakes. Because let's say you never drank. You're Donald Trump. Okay, but you made some mistakes somewhere along the way, and all we're saying is if you can acknowledge it and say, okay, I want to change, everybody has the ability to overcome, because there's more than enough support systems out there, and there's a support system upstairs, as far as I'm concerned, that you can tap into if you can't find a group to join. But leadership is all about, inspiring people to let them know that you're worth following. And the way you show them you're following is, hey, I had a challenge too. And if someone says, okay, well, Chris went through that, your kids do, my kids, they're going to figure out, you can talk to them about, let me tell you the cost. And it's real as opposed to the hypothetical.
So what got me after years and years of partying, the hangovers were terrible.
Sure.
You know, I really hated hangovers. It was pretty much like you kind of wasted that night, even though you might have had a lot of fun, and narrowly escaped, going to jail or wrecking or whatever the problem was. But then the next day was a waste. Because I was laying around, my head thumping, and just my body hurting and throwing, and just, it was terrible. And so that was definitely an issue. But several times I'd remember thinking like, man, I should have gotten arrested last night, or I should have got in a wreck last night, or I should have, what would have happened if I ran over somebody and killed them? I'd be sitting in prison, and I don't think I'd do very well in prison. So
I got both sides of that. I got a DUI because I had a flat tire after a bowl game, an Alabama game where they lost to Nebraska, and I'm down at Brookley Field trying to get to my best friend's house 2 miles away in a little Volkswagen doing 15 miles an hour on Virginia Street with a flat tire, thinking if I could just get there.
Just make it. Yeah.
And I wasn't speeding, but on the other hand, I was at a bar when I was out in California that we owned, and I stepped off the curb, and all my friends said, for some reason, an angel must have grabbed you, because there was a car coming that I could have been the person who got killed for the other side. Not because I was driving, but I stepped out because of that tunnel vision you get when you drink or do drugs, and chills on me because I didn't even see it. I was so out of it the next day somebody told me that because it happened and I didn't even realize it happened. So
well, so I'd been thinking about that definitely crossed my mind of the horrible decisions that I made, and just constantly. And for me, I could go days, weeks, months, for as long as I needed to. It wasn't something that I needed every day, but most of the time, whenever I did drink, I continued. It wasn't it wasn't 2 beers and I was done. It was 2 beers led to 6, led to 12, led to, all night long. And I lost count. I don't even know how many. And so, so.
You're a type A. I'm a type A. I get it.
Yeah. So that was a bit troublesome. And I was definitely, considering that, I'd made some really poor choices. And what happened was I went to a race. This would have been August the 25th, 2012. And I was with some buddies. And that next day, I was laying on the floor and my head was thumping.
Yep. Sadly, I can remember 40 years
ago.
So,
and my wife was understanding enough to where she kind of left me alone. But we had a 1-year-old, or almost one at the time. Yeah. And so my 1-year-old is climbing on me. And I'm in pain. My head's throbbing. I'm just like, I just want to go back to sleep. And I'm literally shoving my kid off of me. And then I thought about the figurative part. And I was like, I've wanted my whole life just to be a dad, like to have a kid.
Yeah.
And here I am, I got one, and he loves me so much, he's trying to climb on me, and I'm shoving him away. Ooh. And I'm like, it just hit me right then. I was like, I'm done. I'm done with this. And this is like, I wanted to be a better father, I wanted to be a better husband, and I wanted to be a better leader and a better business owner, and just everything. I was like, this is stupid. This is like, yes, I had fun, but And I wasn't like a depressed type. I didn't, but it was impacting my life in a negative way, and I could see right then that it was going to impact my children's life, and so that was it for me. So,
and I think what you just said, I hope that our listeners are realizing that's a very profound reason that most of us don't take the time. And you were just fortunate that your 1-year-old Noah was climbing up on you, because let's say Noah hadn't climbed up on you, that he was in a crib asleep.
Yeah.
You might have kept on going.
Yeah.
But, I guess the reason we're talking about it is we hope that somebody hears this and it triggers them to start thinking about, do they really need to continue what they're doing?
And
Because,
and for me, I didn't have to go to rehab. I didn't have to go to AA. I just quit cold
yeah,
turkey, and that was it. I don't know what was your situation.
because I got a DUI, a second one, I went to AA, and
Okay.
unfortunately, back then, what I found was people traded one addiction for another. In other words, today it's different, but the AA meeting I walked into, nobody drank, everybody was smoking.
Definitely a lot of smoking, a lot of
And
coffee drinking.
and
Yeah.
I'm going, man, I'm a runner. I may be an alcoholic, but I'm definitely, athletic, and I don't want to sit in a room with smokers.
Yeah.
So I didn't find any benefit of it, other than I found out some facts that the most dangerous thing that police investigate are spousal abuses when, and oftentimes drinking's involved. But that said, I had that thought. I just, like you, I woke up with a hangover, and this thought, I had gone 6 months like you. I'd run a marathon, then I'd be sitting there thinking, as soon as I finish, I can go get some tequila, you know. And I woke up with a hangover, and I said, wait a minute. And I said, I choose health. And I don't know why that thought. It was like, rather than saying I don't drink, which I was disciplined, but my subconscious mind bought it, and I literally, like you, lost all desire to drink. And the reason I know that's kind of weird that you and I can say that is I know so many people that I was still running with because I'm in the restaurant industry. Everybody I know, we had, rather than supper clubs you have here, we had wine tastings where everybody'd bring a different bottle of Chardonnay and we'd brown bag it, try to figure out which one was the best deal.
Okay.
That's the culture I'm in. I quit drinking. I still go to these things, and there were people who quit, but they still wanted a beer 10 years later.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I can go to a bar, I can go anywhere with people, and I'd look at that and I didn't have any desire. Now I have nightmares because I think I woke up and I thought I was drinking, and I mean it's a nightmare because I hadn't drank in 38 years. But the thought of it, I'll share one more thing and then I'll shut up. I told my wife, who's we've been married almost 20 years, so she didn't know me back then. I said I quit when I was 35. And at that time, I said, if I ever live to 70, I'm going to start again. Well, I hit 70, and I told her, I said, okay, I'm going to start drinking again. She said, no, you're not.
So
But-
she's always seen you sober.
Yeah, and
Wow.
my son, I quit drinking before my son was born.
Okay.
So he's never seen me not, but he knows because his grandfather on his mother's side had a career spiral down from being a lawyer to where he could no longer drive a commercial truck because he was caught drunk driving an 18-wheeler on the wrong side of an interstate.
Ooh.
So he's seen he knows stories of it. But, I think the most important thing is recognizing when you have kids, if you want to be an adult, either you know how to moderate, like my wife, she'll have one glass of wine. I couldn't get her to drink 3 glasses of wine if I paid her.
Huh.
But someone like me or you, if I start drinking, I'm going to think, well, I want to have another one.
And I think occasionally, you probably do too. I'm like, I could probably have a beer. I could probably
Yeah.
I'd probably be fine. But then what if I wasn't?
Well,
then I got to start all over. So-
I tried to fit in by drinking non-alcoholic beers when those came out, O'Doul's and all that stuff. That's crap.
I drink
tried it,
I
but
drink
it's-
some NAs every now and then because I just like the taste of beer.
Yeah.
And with crawfish or with, certain you're barbecuing or going I feel like I need a beer.
Right.
And so I'll drink, but I don't have to drink 12 of them.
No.
Like one generally does the spot. I'm kind of full. I'm like, all right, I'm good now.
And probably I could try it. I found when I was doing them, I still wanted to drink 5 of them.
Real, yeah.
And I just, man, my gut was going this way.
Yeah, they're different. The way they internalize, I think, is a little bit different.
Well, in the tree business, where do you think drugs and alcohol fit in? Because we were also talking about, boy,
Man, I would suspect that almost everybody in the business either is currently on drugs or alcohol or has a past with it.
yeah.
If there is a percentage of not, it's probably less than 1. It's probably a very small percentage of it. And I think there's, and I don't have the statistics. Maybe nobody would even care if I did. But I just suspect that it's that way based on the people that I know, what I've seen, been involved with. Like, I think that it's very prevalent, and I think that in certain industries and arboriculture for sure, there's a lot of activities, a lot of outdoor stuff. There's a lot of, it kind of attracts a certain person, kind of adrenaline junkie, and so. I think that you're going to wind up with more of that. Now, you can find it everywhere. You can find lawyers, you can find doctors, you can find,
Oh,
all,
yeah.
all kind of people that are affected. But I think that you're going to find a lot in this industry just based on the type of people that wind up finding themselves in it and don't necessarily want a desk job. They want to be outside, want to be out with activity
Yeah,
and
they're
change of
sweating,
scenery and things going on. And I think the culture, comes along with it. I think there's just, I would be very surprised if it's more than say 0.5% of people that just never even touched it.
Well, here's the funny thing to me, because we spent most of our time talking about alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
We drug test for drugs.
Mm-hmm.
We don't drug test for alcohol.
Kinda. So, like our CDLs, they have to undergo random alcohol screenings as well as random drug tests.
Yeah.
Most of our guys, like if we're suspicious of somebody, we have alcohol tests. But
Okay.
I can't remember the last time that we used one. It's just not. Most people, if they show up drunk, like it.
Yeah.
There's not a and you ask them and they're like, So, but I know where you're going with this though. But go ahead.
No, I guess what I'm saying is, I think alcohol is the prevalent drug, and I've it's a drug,
And it's legal and it's accepted.
and so, but alcohol can have the same impact on somebody's ability to have a successful, happy life.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise AA wouldn't exist. And I know there's Drugs Anonymous, whatever. But the point being is, I think as a leader, what we said is we've got to model what we want in our team.
All right, repeat that because that's important.
You've got to model what you want in your team.
Right. So if I tell everybody, hey, don't drink, don't do drugs, but then I'm doing it myself, I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah.
There's no way I can tell you, hey, you got to sober up, you got to do this, you got to do that, but I'm not going to do it myself. I'm a hypocrite. I can't do that.
And I've got clients that go do annual retreats, and, I moderate them and stuff like that. And what's discouraging to me is when they hold them at a casino, because they're there because they really want to party. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that where, okay, we worked hard, we're the leadership team, let's go have a retreat. And the retreat turns into, and I've been with some where watch the guy take a half gallon of bourbon and just keep holding it up like it's a quart of milk and drinking it. I'm thinking, this company's going nowhere fast.
Yeah.
Because again, leadership is all about modeling what you want. It doesn't guarantee people will do it, but if you don't model something,
right.
or whatever you do model, they will pick up on the things that allow them to do the things that may not be in their best interest.
So people will do what you do a lot quicker than they do what you say.
Yeah. Amen. And they may not do what you do, but if you don't do the right thing, you're not giving them a chance to make that decision. In other words, you've got a lot of people that you could tell them, look, we don't do this, we test for that. You can see none of our leaders do this. They get to choose whether or not they want to play in your group, but at least you're doing that. But if they see that you're hungover or whatever, you can say we drug test, but you've been, in essence, by your behavior, giving them permission. And so that's what I think. At least my son may see my behavior's not perfect, but he won't see it's not perfect because I'm hungover.
So I've got a lot of thoughts going through my head, and I'm writing on my hand to make sure I don't forget. but I probably will. But before we get too far, I don't want to skip rehab because for me, for you, we were able to quit cold turkey. We made a decision. We stuck with it. I know it's not that way for everybody.
Amen.
And so I don't fault someone for going down that path. And let's say, hey, you try to stop and it doesn't work, or you go into cold sweats or whatever it is. Like, that wasn't my issue, but I know for a lot of people it is.
Right.
And so I would encourage somebody to get help, where it's necessary.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I've got some family members that did go through rehab, some of which were successful, some of which, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
It's part of the solution. You know, I think you've got to have faith and support around you to help you get through the physical withdrawals, as well as oftentimes there's a root cause of something's underlying that you're using drugs and alcohol to medicate.
Yes, yes, and I think you will get to that as you start exploring, and that can be tough because you're trying to suppress those feelings, and now you're trying to bring them up to figure out what it was. Oh man, that's going to hurt.
Well,
So
I know. Yeah, I just triggered something I need to share. I was accused at one point of being a dry alcoholic, and I thought, well, that's kind of a stupid.
dry alcoholic. Okay.
What that was is usually an alcohol. What they were saying was an alcoholic has underlying issues. It can be that they're physically just alcohol is addictive to them. Their chemistry says one drink and they can't stop. Most of us get into drinking as a way to medicate because we try to deny the problem. And I think what I was being told is I did have some issues that I needed to confront, that I was using alcohol to medicate and to avoid the issue because I'd rather be out of it than have to think in real time about it. So I went through some exercises over the course of the years that I have gotten better. I still have some issues from childhood or whatever. We all do. But I'm aware of what was being said when I was called that, and I've tried to do some things to address it. And if you don't recognize the underlying causes that are there, then you really don't get a chance to make the changes that you're capable of making because it's that underlying root thing.
Well, and I want to move on in a minute, but I do want to say, like, I have some good friends that were really bad alcoholics, and I'm thinking there's some drug users too, but like one of them, and I'm gonna have him in here, but Colby was a really like probably the worst.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like a bottle or more a day. I mean, would steal, would like not.
Closet, tried to hide it from everybody.
No, there was wide open. Everybody knew he was going nowhere fast.
Yeah.
Colby had to go to rehab, and he told me his first step was, I think it might even been hospitalization, but if he had just quit cold turkey, it would have killed him.
Yeah.
Because he would have what's the word? But
the withdrawals from alcohol.
The withdrawals, yeah. And he told me about that, but I am so impressed by him because he was so deep. Yeah. Like it made my little problem look like child's play. Yeah. I mean, he was deep. But he went to the doctor and the doctor told him, "Hey, if you don't quit drinking, you will die. Yeah. Your liver's going to shut down." And he immediately went, "Holy crap, I got to fix this." Tried to quit, realized he couldn't, had to go to rehab, and he has been clean ever since. And he is going out and basically teaching other people, or teaching might not be the right word, but telling his story, sharing, getting people the help that they need. And I can promise you, he was one of the worst, and now he has turned his life around. So pretty awesome. But, ultimately, you have to make the decision, and no one else is holding that bottle and forcing it in your mouth, right? Right. You make the decision to turn your hand up and pour it down your throat, or to smoke it or inject it or eat it or whatever that you're on. You're making that decision.
Yeah.
So, that and that part might be really tough for some people, but there is help. There is a way. And I'd like to see people go down and explore that path. And I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm not trying to say like it's so easy everybody can just quit. I know it's not for a lot of people, but the benefits are huge.
And again, you've got to help people have the want to. If you can't see the benefit, in other words, you saw the benefit with your son.
Yeah.
It was so dang clear to you that it just boom. Some people don't see those benefits that easily, and so part of what those of us that have gone through it is we need to help them. And the other part that you're talking about is giving people grace, because not everybody can just. Most people make the mistake of thinking that it's a character issue and they're mentally tough enough or strong enough to overcome it, and it's not. When it gets to be a physical part of your chemistry, it's tough, and we need to give people grace to say this is an illness that I'm going to help you through. And I know I lost a college roommate to a bad liver and too much smoking, and he ran a company. It was great, but we buried him a couple of years ago, and it was sad to me because I would go up to see him. He lived in Tuscaloosa and never left there. And we'd go to a basketball game or a football game, and then afterwards he'd still want to go hit the bars. And I'm talking about in our 40s.
Yeah.
And I kept looking at this thinking, it's 12:30 at night. I'm sitting here at a bar drinking a Coca-Cola or soda, and he's still just knocking them away. But he'd get up and go to work at 6 a.m., but it cost him the fact that he's not here.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's some grandkids that would love some more time with Rick.
Sure.
And I'm just saying that because you have the choice, but if you don't make it, it will get you, and you don't need a doctor to tell you. I'm just telling you, there's if you don't try to make the decision and find support, you're just on a slow fade to what you could be.
So the cultural side of an organization is something that we've got to discuss, and a lot of that comes from the leader, and in most cases that's the owner.
Right.
I mean, there may be some sort of management level that somebody is, but for the most part, and most tree companies are very small operations. It's the owner doing a whole lot of things, and then a helper or two. But if you're going to set that culture, again, we talked about being a hypocrite, but you got to be careful how we're setting that, and we have to be intentional about it. And I think back to like when I was partying, like I thought it was a good idea to take my guys to a strip club. And we had a great time. I thought we were bonding, but that was a terrible thing to do. and
you're not alone.
We at our Christmas parties, we would just get hammered, and and I know a lot of companies, they smoke dope together, or they do certain things together. Like that's not. Like it may actually bring somebody closer together. I don't know how that works, but I know as far as that company goes, that's not the culture that you want. That's not who you want to be encouraging in your organization.
Well, I know because you and I work on this, that you've got to celebrate victories for the things that are victories, and so part of that is how do you actually educate people that we want to celebrate somebody like that it's your crew that told Chris that he made a decision to quit drinking. We need to celebrate that. We don't. We celebrate work achievements, but we don't celebrate lifestyle achievements that ultimately translate into better work. Now, can you force people to do that? No.
Yeah.
I mean, because, a lot of the stuff, illegal stuff, you can say, look, here's the risk, and we've got a company policy that we don't support people doing illegals. But there's plenty of legal stuff that you can do that can still, and so to me it's, celebrate it, don't cram it, but also don't model it. And like you said, step one is when you think about a party, it's okay to have alcohol at your Christmas party. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you don't want to you want that to be the exception. We're not saying quit drinking for everything, but we are saying don't make drinking part of your daily habit, because it's probably not good for your health, and it's certainly not good for your ability to think on the job the next day or the next day.
Yeah, and there's a fine line between, pushing my, agenda or my thoughts on somebody versus encouraging them, and so I won't dive off into that, but yeah, I mean, there are still, so like at our Christmas party, we talked about it and we made the decision to give everybody 2 drink tickets. And if they don't want to drink at all, that's fine. But if they do, then they've got the 2 drink tickets. And really what we're trying to discourage somebody from getting plastered.
Sure.
But the other part is we're trying to limit liability. And so if somebody drinks 10 drinks and gets behind the wheel, they were at our company party.
Yeah.
And so, I'm like, I don't want it. I don't do it. I definitely don't want the liability from somebody else doing it. And so, there was just too much there. But we also understand somebody just wants to, like your wife might want a glass of wine with her dinner, and dinner would be awkward without a glass of wine.
If we go out to eat and they don't have a wine list, I'm probably getting up because my wife likes a glass of wine.
Sure. It doesn't mean she's going to get hammered, but a lot of people do handle alcohol and maybe drugs even responsibly, if that's a thing. But so for me, I know I can't have any. Now, some people, maybe they can dial it back enough to where they can just have one or two glasses,
Most of
maybe one or two beers.
that's probably half of society.
Yeah.
Those of us that consider ourselves alcoholic or recovering, whatever it is,
Can't.
no,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
it's
Might
not
try, but
it's not in my
it doesn't
DNA,
work. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so, but it's again, I think what we're talking about is modeling, encouraging the people, and then the other part of this that I think I kind of touched on earlier is you got to help people work through the typical reaction, which is to make excuses. Because most people, when they want to, they know it's going to be hard, and they'll give you the "I'm a victim." There's so many people that keep drinking because they say I'm a victim. This is what I do to wash off my victimhood. And I sit there and try to tell them, like we said, you have choice. You don't have to be the victim.
Yeah.
You may have been victimized in the past, but you can choose to try this. And, we joke, okay, what's a leader? Somebody gets knocked down and gets back up, failing forward, maximum, all that stuff. Well, guess what? Most alcoholics, if you try to quit, you are going to get knocked down. You're going to, as they say, fall off the wagon, but you get back on. And so,
Well, people are afraid of failure, so they think, man, if I quit and then I can't do it,
yeah.
well, now I'm a failure.
Because if I tell
But-
my buddies, hey, I'm quitting drinking, man, as soon as I take one beer and fall off the wagon, here comes a tsunami of, see,
Sure,
Rick,
sure.
you said you were right, and you're going,
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
why did I even try? Because I don't need this.
Yeah.
And that's part of the culture that we have to keep in. I don't think we're going to change the world, but I think if we can change one person at a time,
Well, I think ultimately people are going to change themselves. They have to make the decision on their own. This is probably not going to be a big wow, aha moment for anybody.
Right.
But it puts a thought in somebody's head. And then when somebody does have that moment, then they go, man, that was a close call. Almost died. Or I almost whatever,
Yeah.
right? And maybe that is the moment. But thinking that and just knowing that, hey, there is a life out there, and I can tell you, you can probably attest to it as well. But my life got better when I took alcohol out.
I know the amount of excuses I made, the amount of things I avoided because I was hungover or didn't want to deal with them. And if I didn't want to deal with them, I would use alcohol to get me out of thinking about it. I mean, I would try to numb my brain from thinking about the things that may have been difficult and I should have done. Versus now, I still may have those thoughts, but I'm much more likely to take action because of that. Yeah, no, you're dead right. Maybe that's why it's a nightmare when I think back on those days because, from 12 to 35, I knew how to party.
Yeah.
But I look back now and think, okay, thank you, Lord, that I got through that, and I've been able to live the rest of my life and see what happens. And like I said, I'm living in reality.
Yeah.
How good is that? And it's
Well, and that's one of the things, like we talked about the hangover, and I was sitting there and my kid climbing on me, but I'm also thinking, like, I want to be one way. Now, of course, if I stub my toe, I'm going to get mad, or if somebody, if something happens, I mean, that's a natural reaction. But I don't want my kids to walk in one day and I'm one way and cut up and giggle and laugh and have a good time, and then another day I'm Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and they're like, whoa, what just happened to Dad? I just made a joke, and next thing you know, he blew up. So
and now when you walk into a party, you can tell when somebody's drunk.
yeah, oh yeah,
And for the reason you just said, you can see a different behavior that is not how they are when you see them when they're not. Right. And so the question is that the behavior that you want people to remember you by? And so some people think, yeah, he's a happy drunk or whatever. I don't think so. I think most people that keep going, they wake up the next day with more regret than thinking, man, I am so glad I had that last beer. Now, maybe I'm wrong because it's been so long, but I don't think so.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that just keep going. That maybe they have guilt, or maybe they think, hey, in order to get rid of this hangover, I got to drink a beer, or I got to do this, and it's just a cycle.
And the culture would say, okay, call you up. Oh, let's go have a Bloody Mary before we watch the Saturday football game, because you're waking up drunk on Saturday morning. You're thinking, okay, but I know I'm going to want to just lay here on the couch and watch some football. And so what do? You grab alcohol to kind of get you out of the hangover, so you keep numbing yourself. And man, that's how you end up where you got to go into a hospital to get rid of it.
Yeah, and you may not think of it at the time, but that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Man, I miss a Bloody Mary. Occasionally, I have a Virgin Bloody Mary.
Oh,
I just
I know. Those I do
I
like.
just
I do. I'll drink my virgin.
Yeah.
And I've even tried non-alcoholic wine because I mean, I love wine in the sense that I love swirling it and smelling it because that was what part of the culture I was in. And but no. But
Well, I've often thought about that. It would be really tough to quit drinking if you owned a bar or you managed a bar or
Yeah.
you were. I mean, it's right there all the time. You've got to have really, really strong will and just a lot of discipline.
well, just think of yourself as Pablo Escobar. That you're the largest cocaine dealer in the world, and I suspect you don't do cocaine. And I've seen bar owners that don't drink because they finally woke up to the fact they're in a business that's good margin, but they can't afford to because of just that fact.
But and I've thought about that. I'm like, it would be tough knowing like, hey, I just made a decision for my life that's
Right.
making my life better and involves not drinking.
but I'm pouring it out to all.
Right. And how do I not preach to them to stop drinking? And then like that's not really a business that I want to be in because I'm not comfortable feeding somebody's addiction and messing their life up, but also like not sharing the story and going, hey, your life would be a whole lot better if you quit drinking. And then I don't get customers come back. So I just don't think that's going to be a good model, a good business for me to be in.
But what you said is, if you know you've got a problem, don't put yourself in a position where it's easily tempted to keep the problem going. It's like, I'm a chocoholic. I don't need to work in a bakery that makes chocolate all night and put me as the night security guarding the chocolate till the next day. That is a mistake. I have put myself in a position to not do the things I want to do.
And I love chocolate. My wife sometimes gives me a hard time. She's like, you're going to give yourself diabetes. And I'm like, look, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke. I don't dip. I don't chew. I'm like, let me have some freaking chocolate. Give me something here.
Yeah. I won't go there. There's one more statement that goes.
We're being recorded.
Yeah, there's one more statement that goes with that. But you're right. I mean, I think it's more about recognizing that you do have choice. If I had to say, what are we talking about? We're talking about the fact that sometimes you get lucky and you see a situation where you're being given a choice to get off a road that's really not the road you want to be on. And if you're lucky, you recognize that and you start making a turn. You can either turn around or you can make a turn in a different direction. But either way, you make a change. And the worst part is if you don't, the long-term effect of that road that you stay on, if you don't address that and make a choice, it's always, to me, it seems when I look around other people, it's a lot more costly than you ever realize.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about making your own luck, like if you're out drinking and you make mistakes, then that's on you. We can blame the rest of the world and we can blame the cops for pulling you over or we can blame the, whatever. But if you're intoxicated, if you're, then you're creating some problems for yourself. And
and you could sit in a convenience store if it doesn't depress you, and you watch the number of people, and you have some that work for you, that they get off work and their first thought is to go get a 6-pack, and they may get a 12, a tall pack, whatever. When you realize how much money as a percent of what their take-home pay is that's going to feed that habit, I looked at it the other way. I realized how much money I have saved over 38 years because I don't drink. And I can think of the benefits that's stowed to me because, again, if somebody wants to look at it, when you quit drinking, yes, you're going to find you have a sugar. Most of us, when I quit drinking, I realized there's sugar and alcohol, and that's
needed the sugar.
I'm going to move toward chocolate or something. But in general, once you get out of that, especially with the way the inflation's taken, alcohol, I'd say you're going to find that you have choices in your quality of life that you didn't realize you had just by doing that. most people won't think of it that way, but I promise you, the amount of money that people spend, when you look at it, say, is that really worth that much of my take-home pay? How much of my life that I work for am I then turning around and spending that part of my life, which I got paid to do something in the tree business, I'm spending it on this to make sure that I don't feel good about my, that I have.
Well, and what I heard is people use kind of the same rationale that I just did with the chocolate, and they say, man, I got up at 5 in the morning. I drove to work. I worked all freaking day, busted my butt.
Yeah.
I want to have some beer. And I'm like, I can't really argue with that because, I get it. But at the same time, like, what could you be doing with your time? How could you be bettering your life? Maybe instead of, spending hours drinking, you could be reading a book or listening to a book. Or you could be going, and so you could be maybe studying to become a certified arborist. Maybe you could be study to get some sort of special license, or you could, something that would improve not just like your personal well-being, but also make you worth more, monetarily. So, whether it's moving up in a job with more responsibility, maybe it's, receiving more pay. And so the person, I won't say, just guy, but the person that is willing to take that extra step and do those things on their own and then wind up moving up and moving their own life up does have an advantage over the person that doesn't do that because they're kind of stuck.
Well, let's close it out this way. You and I know that part of the thing, if someone says, tell me your story, you're going to tell about the things that you chose to do that took extra time and effort. You didn't have to do them, but you did it anyway to become the arborist, the company owner that I know because I know your story. Same thing with me. I talk about the things that I chose to do. Both of us have chosen to say, okay, it's nice to get a degree, but the most important thing I do is I keep reading. I keep learning, okay? Yeah. That's a choice, and it takes time. You don't just start reading. You got to give up something. It may be that I don't watch as much TV. I may not drink the second beer or whatever. But if you choose that, you're going to be part of what gives you self-worth is going through the struggle. If you don't have a struggle to get there, it's not going to mean as much. But if you have a struggle, it means even more.
So I wrote this on my hand because I don't want to skip it. Well, there's two things. So one is I got invited to this party for a judge that was running for re-election.
Yeah.
And I call it a party, but it wasn't much of a party. There was no alcohol there, which I was pretty surprised to see because most of all type parties, there's alcohol somewhere.
He must be Baptist.
I don't know. But I remember asking him that night, and so I asked him, a few things. Not hey, why isn't there any anything to drink here? But I asked him. I said, what is the most common crime that you see come through your courtroom? He said, he gave me a high number. I can't remember what it was, but it was in the 90s. But almost all of his cases had to deal with drugs or alcohol in some way or another.
Right.
And even if it was something that didn't have anything to do with
petty theft, let's say.
Well, it could be in, spousal abuse. Generally, one of them or both was intoxicated.
Yep.
Okay. Certainly theft, a lot of times it's drug users, just trying to get enough to get, another hit or whatever. If somebody it was always involved with alcohol or drugs. And a lot of them was, getting arrested for possession or getting arrested for dealing.
Yeah.
And so, but there were a surprising number of cases, and he was telling me about that it wasn't about the alcohol or drugs. It was about the crime, the other crime, but it was influenced they were under the influence is probably a better way to put it. And I was thinking, man, how many people's lives, they just screwed their own life up and now they're sitting in jail, possibly prison. They've got tons of fees and fines. They got a lawyer to pay. They got, for a fun night out. And I've been there, so I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, but there's so much in the justice system, like that's what they're dealing with.
Yeah. So what was it? Did you have a second?
So the other part is Oxford House, and this is not a commercial for them, but what they do is they take somebody that has typically gone through rehab,
right?
And then what happens is once you go through rehab, then you go back to your same community. same group of friends, same family, same area, whatever. And the reason that so many people fail after rehab is because
Recidivism.
they're right back in the same group that they're influenced by the same people. They're going, hey man, one beer won't hurt you, man. Come hang out with us. What are you? So what they do is they house people together. I guess you could call it a sober house or something like that. But everybody that's there, they have to apply to be there. It's not a court order thing. They can't just say, hey, the judge said I need to go. No, 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 no.
No,
You have to want to be there. And so you also have to want to be sober and hold each other accountable. So everybody there, they're committed to sobriety and they're also committed to everybody else's sobriety.
Right.
And so they lay the rules out very quickly, right up front, and they tell you if you violate your sobriety, you are out in 15 minutes. This is not a normal situation where you're going to have, months and fight your eviction in court or whatever. They have a keypad on the door, and if you don't move it yourself, they move your things out. They change the keypad on the door, and you're done. You're out. So
Where is that?
So they rent houses, and they rent one of mine.
Okay.
And that's how I know about it. And when the lady first started telling me about it, I was like, wait a minute, hang on a minute. But she told me about it. She told me her situation was that she went to rehab multiple times. She'd always go back to, and what saved her, what got her out of it was being able to go to one of these sober houses through Oxford House, and she wound up working there. And now, so anyway, but there's several in all the different communities. You can look them up, OXFORD. And they're really cool in what they do, and I really support what they're doing because it's really cool, and they're making changes.
Good stuff.
Yeah, really good stuff.
The reason I asked that is I read about a story about a house like that in Denver.
Okay.
And it was filled with nothing but ex-convicts.
Okay.
And they thought they had to have a supervisor living in there. And what they found out was, no, they basically put all the inmates together. They did the same kind of rules that you did. And what was amazing is those inmates starting businesses. And
I read that. I don't remember where, but
they created this
Yeah.
incredible growth of businesses.
Yeah.
The point being is the talent that was already God given in all those people flourished when they were in a supportive team environment, and it's like, Wall Street Journal may have been writing up about how this worked. And the point being is when you put people together in that accountability system, the other thing you just said is you're unleashing all the talent that they've been basically kind of smothering for all these reasons. And there's a lot of potential that's getting masked and covered over by the topic we're talking about. That if nothing else, if we can help people realize their full potential, everybody's got more potential. And drugs and alcohol just one of those things that are just a hurdle that keep people from being all they could be. And you and I know it because we're grateful for how far we've come once we got that hurdle off the path.
Well, and I don't know where my life would be. I really think I'd probably be in jail or prison. Like,
my mother probably would have committed suicide if her son, who she saw all the potential and loved me forever like your mom does, if I'd have blown it and kept drinking it and hit somebody in a car and gone to jail for it, because it's hard to overcome.
And I think like beyond my selfish, self not just wanting for me to be in prison, how would I live with myself for running over somebody?
Oh, yeah.
Especially like, I'm not talking, I was just driving down the road and then somebody appeared, like I was drunk and ran off the sidewalk or what, like, how would I live with myself? And then, I mean, and that's still just about me, but how about them? Like their life ended.
Yeah,
so, I thought about that a lot. I'm like, man, this is dumb. This is,
Well, given that we started a podcast to talk about things that we're interested, I hope somebody who's listening to this, my prayer is that they heard something that triggers them to, if nothing else, to think about why are they doing what they're doing, and is there something that they are keeping them from doing it because of what they're doing. If we change one person's thought pattern, and if not, it's been fun to go back down memory lane and realize how lucky both of us are that for different reasons we've chosen to be sober, and the benefits that have accrued, that it's real. Yeah, we're not just faking this for the sake of a topic.
No, man. I am still married, and I've got 2 children, and I've got, a great business with great people, and I have managed to attract really, really good people in there that can take care of things. And, if I was still inebriated, it'd be a mess.
Well, and I know of at least two cases this year of one young, one older, both potential leaders that are going to move up in your company that have made the decision that they were letting alcohol get in the way, and they're on the road to trying to either reduce it or eliminate it. Yeah. And that didn't happen by accident. I think between you and the other leaders in the company, they've seen something, and the culture you've created has encouraged them to do that. And I know it's not because you said we're going to have this campaign. It's just part of what's there. So good for you.
And we try to keep out the ones that are, party animals. They're not a good fit. But sometimes one kind of sneaks through and they start bragging about, oh man, last night I did this and I went. And they're not getting support from the other guys. They're not going, oh, that sounds awesome. They're like, man, we don't do that here, So they don't feel welcome, and they wind up just kind of exiting. They're like, this isn't really for me. I'm trying to tell everybody about how I did all these great things, and I partied, and I had this many girls, and these guys are like, man, I'm married, got kids, I don't get a job, like I'm on my way to do something great. I don't need that in my life. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, I think that they probably do try to help people along, but ultimately they're not encouraging that behavior.
Yeah, I think, when people don't get encouragement for what they're doing, they get a choice. They're either going to stay or they're going to change.
Yeah.
Or they're going to leave. I mean, really, when you don't get any support for you being you, then you either have to say, okay, I need to get somewhere else, or maybe I need to change me to fit in here because I like it here.
And there's a lot to do with making choices, with everything. So, all right, I know you got somewhere you got to be. Let's wrap this up. You got any final thoughts?
Yeah, choice.
Yeah.
You can choose to be a victim, you can choose to be a winner, and you can choose to get help. Yeah. And all those things are all your choice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I agree with you, and I am glad that I am sober. And I don't want to necessarily associate with people that are continuing to go down that path. We've got some things to where I do have some of those people in my life, but it's not to hang out and celebrate with them. It's to try to get them better.
Yeah, maybe that's...
And that's a whole nother episode, but...
let's leave it there.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Great. We'll celebrate sobriety. Well, cheers to that.
Amen, brother.
All right.
I sit here waiting for you to stop this life I've lost on the important things here in my life, and you know this and you see this, but you get wasted again. You're wasted. Oh, so how does it feel? You're wasted. Oh, so how does it feel? You're wasted. I can't control you. You're wild. I cannot calm you down. You're wasting my time. Wasted